Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is Ronin. This is a game published by Devolver Digital and produced by Tomasz Wacławek. I hope that that's correct. I usually butcher foreign names. I'm sorry. It's a problem that I have. So, upon first glance, this looks like a fairly standard side-scroller. Upon second glance, this looks like the bastard child of Mark of the Ninja and Gunpoint. And, if you look at it again, you'll think, hang on a minute, turn-based combat? What? What? So, it's all of those things and then some. But before we go into it, let's have a look at the options menu and complain. Yeah, so there's not really a lot going on here. Video options are minimalistic to say the least. Having the ability to customize your resolution is pretty standard in PC gaming these days. Could we please have that? Why is that missing? Couldn't tell ya. Audio options. Very, very basic. You don't need any more than this, I don't think. Actually, yes you do. Because you don't have sound effect volume. You've got master volume, which is everything, and music volume. So, I get it's sort of a bit possible to get the sound levels where you want them if you reduce the music volume and then tweak the master volume, but separate slider for sound effects, please. Come on, you can do better than that. But it's okay because we have Alienware light effects. We don't need that. What's missing here? Any kind of key rebinding whatsoever. Let me put it this way. If you want to play this game with a keyboard and mouse, you are probably going to have a less than optimal time with it. And I'll show and explain why that is once we get into the gameplay. But, as we go in, big, bad, bastard bugbear. 30 frames per second. Now, you remember when I mentioned turn-based combat? Yes, it does have turn-based combat, and you will see how that works in a minute. But the thing is that not all of the game is turn-based combat. As you can see, this bit right here is all in real time, and indeed all of the sneaking and stealth kill stuff, basically as long as you don't alert a guard, then the game is running in real time. What does that mean, kids? That means, kids, that you should not be running your game at all in 30 frames per second. Silly, 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 silly. Yes, it does mean the game is less enjoyable. It's okay in the turn-based bit, but as you're climbing around the place, as I'm doing right now, not so much. Don't know why the developer decided to do that. He's obviously locked it to 30, probably locked the game logic to 30. Please don't do this. Please. I don't care if you're a small indie developer, and I do not care if you're developing something that has turn-based combat and is also sort of a side-scroller 2D platformer. 60 or bust. Thank you very much. Anyway, there's no point in me harping on about that too much, because if you're someone that's completely against 30 FPS in all forms, you've probably turned off by now. So let's talk about the actual game. So it does look a little bit like Gunpoint, doesn't it? It is not. It's not. Just, it was inspired by Gunpoint, but this is less of a sort of stealth. I suppose it is a stealth action game. The game claims it is not stealth, but there's actually certainly quite a great degree of stealth involved in it. But there are plenty of places where you'll be forced to fight. So what's unusual about it? Well, the first thing is the way that the game actually controls is somewhat unusual, to say the least. So, in order to jump, what you've got to do with a controller is take your right stick and start to aim it, like this, so you can move it around. If you're playing with a keyboard and mouse, you have to hold the mouse button down and then aim it like this. This is really difficult to get used to. It's a complete pain in the arse, at least initially. You can get used to it, absolutely, and thankfully, since most of the combat is turn-based, not all of it, but most of it, you have all the time in the world to make sure that you angle things correctly. I think I prefer the controller for this, and it almost seems to me like this game was designed with the controller in mind. I'm not going to murder you. I might murder you, though. Sneaky, sneaky, sneaky. Let's get out of the light where he's not looking, and yoink! Thank you very much. You can see that little bit is done in real time. Now, oh dear. The jumping is a key part of the game, in fact. Very, very important. Oh, this is going to be a nightmare. Unfortunately, I don't really want to kill these guys off, but I probably don't have too much of a choice. I'm going to actually fail the side objective here, which is to spare civilians, but never mind. Just going to slice them and dice them. So all that's kind of done in real time. But as you probably noticed, when you jump on people, they are stunned. This is a key component of the game, because in the turn-based combat, whenever that actually happens... He didn't see me, so didn't need to worry too much about that. We're going to have some in a minute. There we go. Now he spotted me. So now the game goes into a turn-based combat mode. So what you have is the ability to move a certain distance. Now, thanks to a recent patch, this was not in the game on release as far as I was aware, it will show you where your jump is going to land. But once the jump arc becomes red, that means that's only going to happen on the next turn. So this is as far as I can jump in this turn. So what I want to do here is jump, because that is actually the only thing you can do in turn-based combat, to jump. So let's say I wanted to jump up here. There we go. So what he's now going to do is he's going to draw a bead on me. Now, if by the end of this turn I am still in that red line, I'm going to get shot and killed. You die instantly. So I want to think about how exactly I'm going to deal with that. Now, I'm in midair, so what can I do? Well, I can land, in which case he will miss, or I can try and swing with my grappling hook, so we can give that a go. There we go. And now, I can actually kill him. But what's going to happen if I kill him? Well, if I kill him, I'm going to drop down, and then I'm going to be shot. So I don't really want to do that, do I? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull myself in using the grappling hook, so they then miss. And now things start to get a little bit crazy. There's now 4 guys in here. So what I want to do is start jumping on these guys. And that's going to knock them over. And what it's also going to do is it's going to give me points in this little energy bar down to the bottom of the screen. When I hit 5 points, I get a limit break, which is a bonus turn. Pretty damn important. Now, I'm getting the option here to kill people. If I kill this guy, that's going to take my entire turn. What's going to happen? I'm going to get shot. Simple as that. So what do I want to do? Well, probably the best option here would be to either try and jump on him, which I can't get him from there. As to sort of jump in the air so he misses. There we go. And we could then grappling hook here, which would allow us to swing down. And then we can jump to the ground, and so on and so forth. Now what's going to happen is that they're about to set off the alarms. Can I make this jump? No, they're all sort of tracing me in a pattern here. This is actually a pretty awkward spot to be in. Can jump on there. There we go. And I'm now sort of stuck. We jump off this wall here. And there we go. We've triggered the alarm. So generally speaking, you don't want to do that. But for demonstration purposes, it doesn't really matter. So you're going to be bouncing around the place until you can actually knock these guys down and properly kill them. And you never want to go for a kill unless you're absolutely sure that someone isn't going to then hit you. You can do things like knock bodies into other bodies, which is a key way of not dying horribly. Someone's got a good bead locked on me here, so I'm going to jump into the air above it. And you can also do things like throw your sword if you happen to have got that particular skill. Now, the skill acquisition system of the game is something that I am not a big fan of. The reason I'm not a big fan of it is the only way... I hoped I would duck under that, but apparently not. The only way that you can actually acquire skills is to complete all 3 optional objectives on every level. Now, from what I've seen, every single level has the same optional objectives, which is avoid triggering the alarm, kill all enemies, and spare civilians. Now, every level I've done up to this point has worked this way. So I would imagine that that is the only way that the game actually operates. And we're just going to murder these civilians anyway, because I've already failed this objective, so who cares? There we go. Now, not murdering civilians and killing all enemies is reasonably easy to do. You know, I screwed up there, but whatever. You know, I could have certainly done that a lot better. The main problem I've got is the lockdown. It's possible to very easily have the lockdown occur, and also for the game to then save at a checkpoint directly afterwards, meaning you have to restart the level. I personally think that when it comes to skill acquisition, you can tie some of it into optional objectives, but you should never tie all of it into optional objectives. And the reason that I believe that is because skill acquisition, for me at any rate, is an important part of what keeps me playing a game, because I'm feeling like I'm getting a constant amount of progress. And I'm unlocking new ways to deal with enemies, which makes the game inherently more interesting. When you lock it to optional objectives only, you're punishing people that are not doing those objectives, and what you're effectively doing is you're making the game design not so optional at all. Like, it's like, hey, do these side objectives. Those are actually main objectives, because as far as I'm concerned, skill progression is part of the game objectives in the first place. Like, it's implicit. So, I don't think that's necessarily a good idea. How would I have done it? Well, I would have either allowed you to fail one of the optional objectives, I would have varied them up on a mission-by-mission basis, or I would have made the skill progression work in such a way that every skill costs double the points it currently does, and it allows you to gain 1 point for passing a level and 2 points for completing it optimally. That means you would at least still get progression, and you'd enhance your ninja skills throughout the game, but you would also be in a position where even if you did fail it, you were given an incentive to redo it so you can progress faster. I think that's maybe the best way to do it. I'm not really sure why he thought it was necessarily a fantastic idea to design the game in such a way that all of the skill progression is done via optional objectives. I think that's a little bit silly, personally. Alright, we're going to bounce over here because he's about to get up. So that means we should be able to kill him. There we go. Nice. That's good. And I'm going to go... Actually, I can jump on him since the other guy's calling it in, so... He's going to land about there, so we can now stab him. There we go. Now, I really do enjoy this turn-based combat. I'd like to explain why that is. I like the notion of ninja stealth action games. Here's the problem. I'm really bad at ninja stealth action games. Absolutely terrible at them, in fact. This allows me to think about everything I'm going to do and spend as much time as I need to in order to do that, but it still has some stealth aspects to it. There are some rooms where you're guaranteed to get into combat. The levels are just designed in such a way that there is literally no way to do it without getting into combat. But there are plenty of other rooms where it is possible to do things like this. You know, to just sneak around, and if you happen to have that skill, hang people from the ceiling and knock people out and do other things like that. So there is a degree of stealth to it. But the turn-based combat system is not only really enjoyable to use, but thematically, it gives me this really awesome ninja action fantasy. It reminds me of those ridiculous action movies where the protagonist is doing a series of completely impossible feats to dodge bullets and so on and so forth. Hello. This is a different enemy type. He's got a sword and he will sort of jump and slash at you. What I like to do against him is to exploit the level design in such a way that he slashes himself out of a window and drops to his death. I always find that particularly enjoyable. Gonna have to bounce over him there. Uh-oh. Let's, jump up onto the ceiling so he misses. And he's going to lock onto me again. But if I drop down, I can stab him. He's going to go up in the air. And I've got a bonus turn, so I can slash him. And then I can go and slash him again. Lovely. Anyway, back to that point. When you've got those impossible feats of pure agility, dodging bullets and swords and fighting 10 guys at once, that's absolutely fantastic. And it's the sort of little power fantasy that I get from games like God of War and Bayonetta and so on and so forth. Now, in this game, you get that in a really awesome fashion, simply because the game pauses and allows you to literally do things like dodge bullets, dodge slashes, and place yourself in such a precise way that you're jumping from enemy to enemy to enemy and obliterating them one after another. So you can take on a room full of 20 guys with machine guns with only a sword. And that is the sort of fantasy that most games don't allow you to do, and especially stealth action games. Usually the rule is, look, if you're a melee guy and there's a guy with a gun, you're going to die really fast. I mean, this is true even in action games like, say, the Batman Arkham series. And this game isn't like that. This game says, no, guy with a sword, yeah, you'll be fine. You'll be absolutely fine. Because you have this superhuman ability to see before the bullets land and be able to dodge them and kill people in midair and toss your sword and rain shurikens down on people and all that sort of thing. And it does give you that really awesome ninja fantasy. It's really nicely designed in that way. And I think the turn-based combat system is actually kind of genius in its own little way. And I'm really quite impressed by it. Now, I'm not going to complete all the optional objectives here because I know I've already failed. But anyway, I've already done a really cool boss fight, which involved me fighting in sort of a club area against 20 people, and it took me a long time to figure it out, but once I finally nailed it, it was incredibly satisfying. And that's the core strength of this game. The ability to execute that ninja flip out and kill everybody in the room fantasy using a fairly intuitive turn-based combat system. Control-wise, as I said, it's totally fine with the controller. The level of precision could perhaps be a little bit better, but you can just spend a bunch of time making sure that your jump is going to be absolutely optimal and everything will be okay. What I have noticed, though, is that using the grappling hook in combat often doesn't necessarily work the way that it's supposed to. And I'll say, all right, I'm going to grapple at this speed, at this angle, and I end up just dropping to the floor and getting shot or something along those lines. That has happened, and that's something that I feel the developer certainly needs to work on there. Outside of the combat system, though, I do still have some problems with it. The objectives are always the same. Usually, it's a case of go to 2 different buildings, hack information on the next target, then go and kill the next target on a boss level. Rinse and repeat. Also, if you're looking for a storyline here, it barely has one. It is utterly threadbare in every possible respect. It really is just, these guys wronged you, go murder them. That's it. That's as far as it goes. So, a complete lack of storyline. I don't really have much of a motivation to do what I'm doing here. Thankfully, I don't really need character motivation in order to do that kind of stuff. I know some people do, but I'm not the sort of person that does. You know, I'm the sort of person that can be driven by a set of good mechanics and not in any way care what's going on with the main character. This guy is literally just a vessel for me to execute my super awesome ninja flippy stuff. But don't expect to care about anything that's going on, unfortunately. And you know, for some people, that's going to be a problem. As I mentioned before, the reliance on these side objectives, which are the same every single level, I think is personally a weakness, and I don't think it's particularly well designed. It would be nice to see a little bit more variety in that regard. But I think the core mechanic is solid for the most part. Whether the core mechanic is going to be enough to actually keep you in the game, that's a different matter entirely. Perhaps it will be, perhaps it won't. For me, I do want to try and finish the game, because every time I get a new skill, I unlock different ways to actually approach things. This is going to be a little tricky. If I land there, I'll probably duck under it. Maybe. Yeah, there we go. Doesn't quite tell you that, but usually if you land, you duck automatically, so everything's kind of fine there. There we go. And we should be able to kill that guy and not get shot in the head. Thank you. Good. So yeah, I do want to finish the game as a result of that. For some people, I know that's definitely not going to be enough, and it's hardly a perfect game. But I do like the level of innovation that's been put into play here with this combat system. It does allow you to fulfill a particular fantasy and do so in a really effective way that other games haven't necessarily managed to do, because they're most likely constrained to the fact that they're real time. So it's a neat idea. I'd like to see an expansion on that idea. You know what I think would be really awesome if this guy ever gets the chance to do a sequel, is to maybe do it with 2 characters, because I think that would really enhance the strategic depth of the game. Would really make you think an awful lot more about your moves, be able to do tandem moves and tag team moves and things like that. I think that would actually be incredible, and it would really, really work well with the turn-based combat system. I would certainly like to see a little bit more precision with that system, obviously. I think that he needs to have another look at the way that he does his mouse control in order to make that happen. But I think this is a really nice opening effort from this developer. It is laden with problems, there's no doubt about that. You know, I've listed off a laundry list of problems that might kill other games, and I think that would be a totally fair assessment. There are certainly times, though, when a game's core mechanic is so enjoyable that it allows me to overlook that sort of thing. And Ronin is actually one of those games. I can overlook the completely lackluster story, I can overlook the repetitive objectives, I can overlook the 30 frames per second cap. Really only because the combat's turn-based. If the combat was real-time, I would be lambasting it far more than I currently am. Now, it is always worth noting that while every game is better at 60, without a doubt, there are games which are more tolerable at 30, and turn-based games are titles that are more tolerable at 30. But Ronin's not too shabby. Honestly. It's got some good ideas, and I've enjoyed my time with it up to this point. You can pick it up for $12 on Steam, and you can also pick it up on Axiom Esports sponsor GOG. And you may enjoy it. If the Ninja Fantasy thing is enough for you. It's certainly lackluster in many other areas, there's no doubt about that. But to me, the core combat mechanic does carry it, thankfully. Ooh, this should be fun. And as a result, I've actually had a pretty good time with it. So I'm hoping that he gets the chance to perhaps make a sequel and possibly enhance some of the weaker areas that this title happens to have in future efforts. And please, 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 please. Can we have it at 60? Please? Is it too much to ask? Hope not. Absolutely hope not. Ronin, ladies and gentlemen. $12 are your regional equivalent on Steam and GOG.com. My name has been TotalBiscuit. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.